decades, pickup trucks weren't just vehicles, they were identity, power, pride, a rolling symbol of success. Families stretched their budgets, workers signed impossible loans, and corporations reaped record profits. Prices climbed higher every year, reaching levels no one thought possible, $70,000, even $80,000 for a truck that once cost half as much. And people kept buying. Until they didn't. By 2025, thousands of brand new pickups are sitting untouched under the sun. Rows upon rows of unsold F-150s, Silverados, and Rams collecting dust behind dealership fences. Sales have stalled, prices are collapsing, and the entire system built on endless growth is starting to crack. It wasn't inflation, it wasn't technology, it was greed, pure and simple. Automakers built luxury palaces on wheels, loaded with leather, chrome, and touchscreens, then called them work trucks. They believed the American consumer would keep paying more, forever. But that illusion is breaking, and the market is about to face a reckoning it can't escape. Behind the numbers lies something deeper, a cultural shift. The pickup truck, once a tool for farmers, welders, and builders, became a status symbol for office workers and suburban families. It stopped being practical, it became performative. And now, that transformation is coming back to haunt the industry that created it. Loan defaults on trucks are at their highest level since 2008. Nearly 1 in 5 new owners owes more on their vehicle than it's actually worth. Creditors are tightening their grip. Dealerships are desperate, offering free upgrades, lifetime maintenance, even cash rebates just to move inventory. Videos of empty showrooms and pleading salesmen are spreading online, turning a quiet slowdown into a public collapse. Meanwhile, a new generation of electric startups is reshaping the battlefield. Companies like Slate and Tesla are promising fully functional electric pickups for under $20,000. Simple, efficient, and affordable. And for the first time in decades, legacy automakers are afraid. This isn't just about trucks, it's about the story America told itself. That bigger was always better, that luxury meant progress, that price meant quality. That story is ending. By 2026, analysts predict prices for used pickups could fall by as much as 30%. Entire dealerships could vanish. The myth of the indestructible American truck may finally meet its breaking point. The crisis brewing in the American pickup truck market didn't erupt overnight. It's been quietly building for years, hidden behind glossy advertisements, record profits, and the illusion of endless demand. For over a decade, the pickup truck has been the crown jewel of the U.S. auto industry. Automakers like Ford, General Motors, and Ram have relied on them for as much as 70% of their total profits. These trucks weren't just vehicles. They became cultural icons, symbols of power and identity. But by 2024, the cracks began to show. Prices that once inspired pride began to provoke disbelief. The same Ford F-150 that sold for $38,000 a decade earlier now demanded $68,000 for the same trim. Limited editions crept over $90,000. At first, the market accepted it. Buyers told themselves it was the cost of progress, bigger screens, smarter tech, more comfort. Yet beneath that shine, the economics stopped making sense. At dealership lots across Texas, Oklahoma, and Michigan, thousands of unsold pickups began to pile up. Drone footage from outside Dallas revealed acres of idle trucks. An estimated 40,000 vehicles sitting under the sun, their paint fading before their engines ever turned over. Dealerships grew quiet. Salespeople, once confident and loud, now whispered about inventory freezes and incentive emergencies. An anonymous dealer in Ohio admitted to local media that his monthly sales had fallen by 42% compared to the previous year. "We used to sell a Silverado every 3 hours," he said. "Now we can't even move one a day." The reasons were complex but unmistakable. After years of inflation, stagnating wages, and rising interest rates, ordinary Americans could no longer justify paying the equivalent of a mortgage for a pickup truck. The average monthly payment on a new truck exceeded $1,200 in late 2024, a record high. Loan terms stretched to 8 or even 9 years. People weren't buying trucks anymore. They were financing lifestyles they couldn't sustain. The result was predictable. Repossessions spiked, and the used market flooded with vehicles few could afford to maintain. Manufacturers tried to blame external factors: chip shortages, higher material costs, inflationary pressures. But insiders quietly confessed that the core issue was greed. For years, executives had chased higher profit margins, pushing trucks further up market, stuffing them with luxury features that alienated traditional buyers. A base model became an illusion. Few existed outside the brochures. In one leaked memo from a major automaker, an executive admitted, "We don't sell trucks anymore, we sell image wrapped in metal." The irony is that demand for genuine work trucks never disappeared. It was simply ignored. Construction crews and small businesses began turning to used models from a decade earlier, preferring simpler, cheaper designs. Some even imported compact pickups from overseas markets, taking advantage of loopholes in the 25% chicken tax tariff. It was a quiet rebellion against the corporate vision of what a truck should be. The result was a slow, creeping disillusionment, both economic and emotional. By early 2025, the once mighty truck market had entered a silent crisis. Production lines in Michigan and Kentucky slowed to half speed. Some plants introduced 3-day weeks to avoid layoffs. The national inventory of unsold pickups reached an estimated 1.2 million units, the highest in history. And yet, the billboards still shone brightly, promising built tough, professional grade, like a rock. The truth was harder to advertise. The American pickup, once the heartbeat of the working class and the profit engine of Detroit, was collapsing under its own weight. The empire had grown too heavy, too proud, and too expensive to sustain. What had begun as a symbol of resilience was turning into a monument to excess, and the market was finally waking up. The roots of the pickup truck crisis run far deeper than anyone inside the industry wants to admit. For years, executives at major automakers have blamed the slowdown on external forces: inflation, higher interest rates, global supply issues. But those explanations are convenient distractions from a more uncomfortable truth. The crisis was engineered from within. It was built on years of unchecked greed, short-term thinking, and an unwavering belief that consumer loyalty could withstand any abuse. Automakers took one of the most practical, purpose-driven vehicle segments in history and transformed it into a luxury market bubble. The American truck stopped being a tool and became a trophy. From out the 2010s and early 2020s, manufacturers poured billions into upscaling their truck lines, adding touchscreen dashboards, massage seats, premium sound systems, and chrome-heavy styling that had nothing to do with utility. They called it innovation. They said it justified the soaring prices. But the truth was simpler. They realized that trucks carried emotional weight. Buyers would pay more, not because they needed more, but because they wanted to feel more. More powerful, more respected, more American. Ford's marketing department famously described the F-Series as the backbone of the nation. General Motors ran ads declaring that Silverado owners don't just drive, they define. The psychology worked. For a while, at the same time, ordinary consumers were reaching their breaking point. The average price of a new pickup exceeded $60,000, 0 cents by 2023, while real household incomes had barely grown. Families who once could afford a reliable work truck were being priced out entirely. For the first time since the Great Recession, middle-class buyers began walking away from showrooms empty-handed. One internal survey from a major automaker, leaked to the press in 2024, revealed that 48% of prospective customers no longer considered new pickups financially reasonable. Some respondents even used stronger language: a scam, corporate theft, a truck built for bankers. This obsession with image also created a marketing echo chamber. Manufacturers convinced themselves that Americans wanted bigger, heavier, flashier trucks, but surveys showed something else entirely. By 2025, 58% of truck owners admitted they rarely, if ever, used their vehicle for work or towing. The truck had become a commuter car with oversized tires, Yet the price kept climbing. Automakers justified the excess by blaming advanced safety systems and AI integration. But insiders quietly acknowledged that most of these additions added little real value. They just padded the sticker price. In the background, another problem grew quietly: the debt bubble. As lenders extended loans up to 96 months, millions of buyers found themselves upside down, owing more on their trucks than the vehicles were worth. By late 2024, nearly 1 in 5 truck loans was underwater. Defaults climbed 27% in a single year. Banks began tightening credit requirements, which further reduced sales. The industry that once symbolized American prosperity had turned into a cautionary tale of financial overreach. All these forces, inflated prices, overproduction, marketing arrogance, and financial overextension, converged into a perfect storm. The greed that fueled record profits had finally undermined the foundation of the business itself. Consumers were no longer inspired, they were insulted. The pickup truck had become the victim of its own success, a symbol not of endurance but of excess. And as the walls of the market began to crumble, even the most loyal customers started to ask the question no automaker wanted to hear: what exactly are we paying for anymore? By the time the cracks in the pickup truck empire became too large to ignore, the response from both consumers and dealers was a mix of disbelief, frustration, and panic. Buyers, who had once proudly driven off dealership lots with their new $70,000 0-cents trucks, were now realizing they had bought into a collapsing dream. The resale market turned brutal. The 2023 Ram 1500 Limited that sold new for $76,000 0-cents fetched barely $48,000 0-cents a year later. Auction houses were flooded with repossessed vehicles, their values dropping so fast that dealers stopped bidding altogether. For the first time in decades, owning a new truck became a liability, not a point of pride. Online forums filled with anger and regret. Posts from construction workers, small business owners, and even long-time enthusiasts who felt deceived by an industry that promised strength but delivered debt. "I used to think this truck said something about who I was," wrote one user on a popular automotive subreddit. "Now it just reminds me how easily I got played." Dealerships, once the temples of the American automotive dream, turned into arenas of desperation. On weekends, when showrooms used to buzz with families and country music blaring from loudspeakers, there was now only silence. Salesmen, some working on commission-only contracts, spent hours refreshing lead sheets or chasing down uninterested customers in parking lots. Managers invented increasingly bizarre promotions to lure buyers back. A dealership in Nevada offered free home generators with every new truck. Another in Missouri ran an event promising a lifetime supply of gas, a gimmick capped at $3,000 0-cents worth of fuel vouchers that customers soon realized barely covered a few months of driving. Videos of these awkward sales pitches began circulating online, turning the industry's struggles into viral content. The American Truck Channel on YouTube saw viewership triple as users tuned in to watch the slow-motion downfall of the market. Meanwhile, new players sensed opportunity. Electric vehicle startups like Slate Motors, Nimbus, and Atlas began rolling out compact electric trucks priced under $25,000 0-cents, claiming efficiency, simplicity, and reliability over flash and luxury. Their campaigns mocked the bloated legacy models dominating the market. One Slate commercial, viewed over 40 million times, opened with a massive gas-paying truck struggling to fit into a parking garage before cutting to a compact electric pickup sliding effortlessly into place with the slogan, "The right size for the real world." For consumers burned by years of price hikes, these ads hit home. Electric pickups were no longer futuristic novelties. They represented an escape from an exploitative system. The panic within traditional automakers was immediate. Internal emails leaked to industry journalists showed that executives were calling emergency strategy sessions to discuss the Slate effect. One executive reportedly wrote, "We are losing the cultural argument, not just the customers." Engineers were told to accelerate development of smaller, cheaper models, but the machinery of legacy manufacturing moved too slowly. The same companies that had spent years promoting oversized, overpriced trucks now struggled to design vehicles that people could actually afford. Their brand identities, built on excess, had become a trap. Protests began in unexpected places. In early 2025, a group of small business owners in Oklahoma City staged a demonstration in front of a major dealership, parking their aging trucks in a line and hanging banners that read, "Bring back the real truck." They weren't demanding electric vehicles or government action. They just wanted something honest, affordable, and built for work. The protest was small, but the image of dusty, dented F-150s facing off against gleaming unsold models behind dealership gates spread across the internet. It became a metaphor for the industry's failure to understand its roots. This cultural turning point also hit at a time when trust in big corporations was already crumbling. Consumers felt exploited not just by automakers but by the entire financial ecosystem that supported them. High-interest loans, deceptive advertising, and endless upselling had turned buying a truck into an exhausting ordeal. An independent survey by the fictitious Transportation Integrity Bureau in late 2024 found that only 22% of Americans believed car dealerships act in good faith. For comparison, the same survey gave airlines, long despised for poor service, a higher trust rating. The numbers were humiliating. As this shift unfolded, the old marketing slogans, "built tough, professional grade, like a rock," began to sound hollow. They were artifacts of an era when people believed in what those trucks represented. But by 2025, the myth had been exposed. The working-class buyers who once defined the pickup market no longer saw themselves in the glossy ads. Younger generations, raised in cities and burdened with debt, viewed large gas-powered trucks as wasteful relics. The emotional connection that once bound Americans to their pickups had been severed. By the time analysts began openly talking about the collapse of truck culture, the transformation was already complete. The traditional pickup was no longer aspirational, it was cautionary. What replaced it wasn't just new technology, but a new mindset. Practicality replaced prestige. Consumers who once bragged about horsepower now compared charging times and cost per mile. A quieter, humbler kind of ownership was taking shape. In the end, what happened to the American pickup truck wasn't just an economic correction, it was a cultural reckoning. A nation that once celebrated excess was rediscovering restraint. The buyers who had been priced out and humiliated by an industry's greed were now shaping its future. Electric trucks, compact designs, and honest pricing weren't just trends, they were symbols of recovery, of balance returning to a market that had lost its soul. The fall of the modern pickup wasn't the end of a product, it was the end of an illusion. The illusion that the American dream could be mass-produced, sold with a warranty, and financed at 8.9% APR. The empire built on chrome, horsepower, and vanity had finally met the one force it could never overpower: reality. Factories across the Midwest slowed to a crawl. In Detroit, Louisville, and Arlington, production lines that had once run 24 hours a day now sat idle for half the week. Layoffs rippled through the supply chain, hitting not just automakers but the countless small manufacturers that supplied parts. Seat foam in Ohio, aluminum frames in Michigan, wiring harnesses in Illinois. Economists at the Fictional Industrial Policy Institute estimated that nearly 74,000 jobs were lost in the first half of 2026 alone. Local news stations showed images of workers leaving factories with cardboard boxes in hand, the same workers who only a few years earlier had been building record profits for the same companies that now cut them loose. For consumers, the shift was equally dramatic. The resale market collapsed. Used truck values fell by up to 35%, leaving millions of owners underwater on their loans. Online marketplaces that once buzzed with overpriced listings were suddenly flooded with desperate sellers slashing prices week after week. Some dealerships refused trade-ins altogether, arguing that the market was too unstable to predict next month's value. Finance companies tightened credit requirements so severely that even buyers with decent scores struggled to qualify. The easy money era that had fueled the bubble was over. In response, automakers began introducing back-to-basics models, stripped-down trucks built with steel bumpers, vinyl seats, and minimal electronics. They were marketed as heritage editions, but everyone understood what they really were: survival products. The goal wasn't to impress, but to restore trust. And surprisingly, it started to work. Farmers, contractors, and small business owners, the people the truck was originally built for, began to re-engage. A modest truck priced at $28,000 suddenly looked revolutionary. Some experts called it the return of the working truck, a quiet rebellion against 2 decades of excess.